Hello and welcome to Friday's ESPN FC Live. Mark Donaldson here, delighted to be joined by Stevie Nicol, by Dallin Cuff, and by Rob Dawson. So many games this weekend. We're going to pick two to look ahead to. Probably the biggest two weekend games this coming up. We've got the Barcelona Real Madrid Clasico. But first of all, we're going to talk Manchester derby. And before we get the thoughts of our guests, let's hear from Pep Guardiola talking about what Old Trafford might have in store for City.
No, Old Trafford was when I was in Barcelona by Munich, and I traveled to England to play against United. Old Trafford was a special scenario, special place, and of course he is special for our fans, for all of us. But at the end, it's a football game. It's not like a FA Cup final or in the last fixtures of the season, like winning or losing can define winning or not the Premier League. Still is the 9th fixture, so 87 points to play. So it's not a game. You have to be focused. What do you have to do to beat them?
Okay, so the last time Pep took his City side to Old Trafford, Rob, they lost by 2-1 despite taking the lead back in January. Now, both the Manchester City and Manchester United press conferences were at the same time this morning. You went to see Erik ten Hag at Manchester United. What did he have to say?
Yeah, I mean, Erik ten Hag is obviously talking about the Manchester derby as being, globally one of the biggest games of the weekend. Not just the eyes of Manchester on it, but the eyes of the world. Really, it's that big an occasion. He did have some injury news to report as well. That we expected Casemiro to be fit for the derby. He missed the game at Sheffield United with an ankle problem. He picked up playing for Brazil. He missed the Copenhagen game because he was suspended. But we were expecting Casemiro to be fit for the derby, but Ten Hag was a little bit more pessimistic than that and said that it's going to be a race against the clock now. If he's going to be fit, he said he's not 100%. They're obviously going to train again on Saturday, and they'll see how he is. But if they were to be without Casemiro, it's going to make a tough task even tougher.
Stevie, City going to United. We'll get Dallin's thoughts in a second on what the bookies think about this one, but they're going as favourites. Do you expect them to make amends for that defeat that they suffered back in January?
100%. I mean, other than blind faith and gut instinct and the fact that it is a derby, there is nothing that points towards a Manchester United victory, even though it is at Old Trafford. So, yeah, I mean, if you're going to analyse both sides, the way they're playing, if you're going to analyse both teams individually on paper, I mean, every which way you look at this game, there really should only be one outcome, and that's a City victory. But the problem is, United over the last couple of years, including that defeat on City in January, they also did it to Liverpool. Like the season before, Liverpool, as big a favourites as City are going into this, come away with a loss. So, as I said, you can't rationalise this game and come up with a reason why Manchester United are going to win it. You just can't.
Dallin, I remember previewing that Manchester derby back in January, and we basically echoed everything that Stevie had said. Don't see how United can win this one. City, big favourites for it. United, huge underdogs. Yet United won it. What have the bookies got to say this time, the odds makers ahead of this one?
Well, City's even bigger favorites, and United's even bigger underdogs. United is plus 425. So for folks that don't bet much, understand that means if you bet $100, you can win $425. They are by far the biggest home underdog of the weekend. I think Palace is also at plus 370. Conversely, City is minus 155, which means you have to bet $155 to win $100. And really, I think what the bookies are telling us is, yes, we know City's are favorites, but last year in January, I don't think Manchester United was not in the same situation now. It feels like they are in crisis mode across every stratosphere, whether it be in the boardroom with the sale of the club or part of the club, obviously Ten Hag and different players, and then the actual form of different players. So there's just so many issues across the board. And while City has gone through a bit of their wobble, I think you can point to Rodri being out and some other issues with some guys maybe not playing at their full level. They lost their last two road games in league play, but I think they know exactly who they are and what they're about. When you look at United in terms of their patterns of play or lack thereof, or just their general form, and again, all the chaos around the club, it's a very different scenario than it was even last January. And I think that's the numbers reflect that. And let's be real, guys. There's zero shot on betting either side. I might bet a draw, but there's no value in betting City. And I don't think there's any way in heck United's winning the game. So There may be some prop plays to look at and individual goal scorers or things like that could be more interesting. But the actual line of the game is pretty stark by the bookies' perception.
Rob, we can do anything as journalists, as broadcasters, as commentators with statistics. We can make them look as good as you want them, or we can fit our narrative and use them that way. So United's won their last 3. That sounds decent form. Then you look a bit closer and you see how close it was in certain games. United, and you and I and Stevie and Dallin, we've all spoken over the past few weeks about the way that this United team is, the way the club is. Right now, we've used the term crisis. Do those 3 wins mean that United go into this game in a different kind of manner and a mindset than they would have done previously? Or has it just been papering over the cracks? Are there still those problems?
Yeah, I mean, winning games, obviously, I mean, Stevie will tell you better than anyone else.
Sure.
Winning games creates momentum in a dressing room and lifts the mood. However those wins come about, winning games is obviously better than not winning games. That's obvious. But United haven't been convincing at all in those 3 victories. I mean, you can make cases that they probably should have lost all 3 of those. And all 3 victories, whether it was the Brentford game, the Sheffield United game, or the Copenhagen game, have all been won because of individual moments of brilliance, whether it's Scott McTominay's really late double against Brentford or Diego Dalot's goal against Sheffield United. Even at the end of Copenhagen, you need an Andre Onana penalty save. That's not really sustainable for a top team. You can't rely on these random moments of brilliance to win games. Great teams win games through patterns of play and relentless pressure, and United just haven't done that. And that's the problem that United fans have got heading into this game. Yes, they've won the last 3 games, but it doesn't feel that build of momentum that perhaps that run should have created. And they're still going to Old Trafford on Sunday worried about what could possibly happen against City. I mean, there has been instances in the past where, United have turned up into these derby games in really, really poor form, and somehow they've managed to win, whether it was under Louis van Gaal or Ole Gunnar Solskjaer or Jose Mourinho. They have got this knack against Guardiola's City of winning these games almost out of the blue. And really, the United fans who turn up at Old Trafford will be relying on that because, as Stevie said before, everything else that you look at, whether it's City's form or United's form, points to a relatively big City win.
Yeah, keeping on that theme, Stevie, City, yes, Dallin said they're big favourites, even warmer than they were back in January, but they weren't good at Wolves. They lost. They lost to Arsenal. They only beat Brighton by a goal. That's their last 3 Premier League games. So what do you make of their form coming into this Manchester derby?
Well, I think I'm probably pretty much like everybody else. We're trying to figure out how that happened. And it tells you where City stand as far as we're all concerned, that they lose 2 games and we're trying to figure out what's the real problem here. Again, you can look at it another way. You talk about a wounded animal. You talk about a team that has every reason to be focused. If you're on an incredible run of wins and you go to Old Trafford, if you're Man City, maybe there's the occasion you might take your eye off the ball, think you're just going to win without putting the yards in and the grit and the desire. That is completely off the board with this game because of the situation City are in. I'd also add that, what Rob was talking about, basically, he was in my head, he's saying they're getting away with it. And you can't get away with it when you play against the forward line that City have. They are due to batter somebody. City sides of the past, we've been talking about 4s and 5s. And this is possible because Manchester United have been giving up chances and they've been pulling rabbits out the hat, and as far as McTominay and others are concerned, to actually win or get points in games. So it just doesn't feel, and I just don't see any way the Man City don't come here, dominate the game, and actually give Manchester United a bit of a spanking. And
the chances of them dominating the game, Dallin, certainly increased now that Rodri's back, because those defeats occurred when he was suspended.
He's a huge loss. There's nobody else that can replace the role he plays for that team, and he may be the best in that position in the world. And let's not forget, too, as an Arsenal supporter, the Gunners took 3 points off of Nathan Ake's face. Like, if his face is shaped differently and that ball maybe doesn't ricochet off of his grill and go into the goal, that's a 0-0 game. That's a draw. And I think they played well enough to get that draw and it mitigated a lot of what Arsenal tried to do, particularly with Saka in that game. So that the results in their regard may have not gone their way. Whereas, to Stevie's point, United's results have gone their way. I mean, a 97-minute penalty stop by Onana, and we're maybe having a very different conversation. That goal goes in, and they don't get 3 points in the midweek game of Champions League. So there's this, how we're looking at this perception. I think Pep's comments were quite telling as well. I mean, it's not like he was, Ten Hag saying how big this game is globally. That is a fact. Mm-hmm. But for Pep, he's talking about 87 points left, and this isn't that. He's downplaying it because in years past, it's a huge 6-pointer, and this would potentially define who's going to win the league or that be in the conversation to win the league. United's just not there. Their hope is to find a way to be relevant in the top 4 race, and they've gotten through those last results. They've gotten back relevant in that race, but as it relates to contending with City and actually imposing anything on City's chances of winning the league, it's just not quite there. So I really think overall this team's the form that City's in is a little bit much ado about nothing relative to the form that United and quote unquote we're talking about it because they're getting results, but are they playing very well? No, and I think you can find out on this weekend that they pretty much get exposed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty similar to last year as well. City weren't great in the first half, yet they were still there or thereabouts, and then they just took off in the second half and ultimately won it with a bit of ease after Arsenal had that title contenders tag for so long. Before we get to the predictions for this game from our 3 guests, I want to just talk to Rob about the team news. You spoke about Casemiro, Rob. I also want to talk to you about the 2 central defenders of Manchester United you think will start and be tasked with stopping Erling Haaland.
I mean, that a couple of weeks ago would have been a very simple question, but not so much now because Harry Maguire has suddenly found some form out of nowhere. It was unimaginable a couple of weeks ago to think that Harry Maguire could start this game, but obviously he did well against Sheffield United and was man of the match. He obviously scored against Copenhagen. There is a chance that Harry Maguire is going to start against City on Sunday. In the past, Ten Hag, obviously Lisandro Martinez is injured. In the past, when he's had injuries to Martinez, he's preferred to have Victor Lindelof and Rafael Varane. Now, Lindelof, because of other defensive problems, injuries at the back, because Lindelof has had to play at left back and hasn't done particularly well, which means that Harry Maguire has been able to take his opportunity and play well when he's been allowed to play at centre half. So on current form, I would suggest it's going to be Harry Maguire and Rafael Varane. Victor Lindelof will probably have something to say about that. But as I say, I think it will be Harry Maguire. I don't think you can drop Harry Maguire now after he scored and played well against Copenhagen on Tuesday.
Okay, given that you cover the Manchester beat, is it simply a case of going for a draw so you don't upset anybody, or are you going for the favourites? What's your prediction before we get Stevie and Dallin's predictions?
I think I'm gonna upset Stevie. I think United might nick it. I genuinely do. I
told you earlier, blind faith and got instinct.
Plus 425, Rob. Throw that money on him now. Go ahead.
Put your money where your mouth is, Rob.
I'm gonna. Do you know what I'm gonna? Now I know the odds. I'm gonna, because I've turned up at so many of these games before and thought there is absolutely no way that United can get anywhere near City. And City look more vulnerable now than they have done in the past heading into these games. I think United are set up in a way that that Guardiola doesn't particularly like. Ten Hag will set his team up to hit them on the break, and they've got pace on the break, which Guardiola doesn't tend to like. Obviously this is going to come back and bite me, and it's going to be 6-0 to City, obviously. So we can talk about this the next time I'm on. But I think that United might nick it. I think both teams will score, and I think Man United might nick it too.
Two lines that I've never heard in a long, long time. Maguire plays so United win. That doesn't usually follow.
What you got for us, Stevie? What's your prediction? Maguire scores in which minute?
I'll tell you, when the team sheet comes out, the Man City dressing room is going to be like, they'll be like, this is great. I mean, you talk about, listen, we know he can pass the ball, and he's a big lump, and he can challenge, and he can head it. But I tell you what, he can't run. Between him and Sula at Dortmund, there should be a competition for who's slower on the turn. So, no, City wins 2 or 3-0.
Okay, Dallin, you've got one in one corner, one in the other corner. What you got for us?
I'm definitely taking. I'm taking the over 2.5. That's for sure. That's some good money. I think. I think ultimately it's a 3-1 game. I think I don't find a way to score a goal. City hasn't been great in the back, but ultimately they dominate the game and control it. So I'm sorry, Rob, but put your money in there. You're good to go.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll buy the drinks when I win.
You're not getting any drinks from Stevie or me, trust me. We've got to live up to a national stereotype of our frugality. Anyway, we'll have more debate in just a second, because the ESPN FC football forecast team have been tasked with putting together a front three purely made up of players from Manchester United and Manchester City. But which three have they gone for? Let's find out.
Centre forward. Let's go there first, then we'll go left and we'll go right. Højlund versus Haaland.
Yeah, that's Erling Haaland, despite the fact
Bit early, innit?
The talks of demise have been greatly exaggerated in terms of Erling Haaland. He obviously every day of the week he starts for any team in the world.
Super quickly, if you're playing a game tomorrow, you can have Højlund or Haaland. Are you still going Haaland?
Yeah.
Højlund's in good form.
1,000%.
Okay, fair enough. On the right-hand side, you've got Doku. For Man United, we're sort of a bit low on numbers at the moment when it comes on the right side. I don't think much is happening there. Left-hand side, I think it's interesting. Mm-hmm. Rashford up against Grealish. Doku, I guess you could put him on that side. Rashford starts for England.
And
Grealish
in the same
not.
way that you said that Guardiola would be infuriated by Bruno Fernandes, I think he'd be infuriated by Marcus Rashford. The Hollywood balls, the shooting when should pass, I think that Guardiola would lose his rag. And ability-wise, Marcus Rashford has got it. In terms of decision-making, the pauser, he hasn't got it.
Okay.
I can't sit here with this accent and not pick Jack Grealish.
Okay, well, so Rashford doesn't make it. So, 2 players make it in. If you're a Man United fan, if you disagree, let us know. Right down there below, Luke Shaw and Bruno Fernandes. No one else, I'm afraid.
Okay, a front three of Silva on the right, Grealish on the left, who can't even get in the Manchester City team, but you can get in a combined team, and Haaland. I think Haaland's the only one we're going to agree with. All I'm going to say is Stevie Nicol.
Gary, how can you put Rashford in? Seriously?
They didn't. They put Grealish ahead of Rashford.
Grealish. How can you put Grealish in? You got Foden and Alvarez. Alvarez scoring goals for fun. Foden just on a different planet right now, and Grealish hasn't kicked a ball, as you said. So how do you pick Grealish? Seriously. But I guess excuse me. I guess the truth of the matter is, you could pick half a dozen Man City players, including Lewis, and put them on the left-hand side instead of what Man United have, including Rashford or Garnacho, because you're not getting anything from either of them. So I disagree with Grealish big time. But as I said, you can go to the bench and find a couple more from City that you could stick on that left-hand side, and I certainly wouldn't have Grealish though. I know that.
It's a futile exercise. It's a futile exercise if you're not going to talk about Alvarez. I know you're trying to fit in certain positions and stuff, but the guy's playing out of this world. So it's like to not have that discussion without talking about Alvarez is, in lack of better term, it's pointless, in all honesty.
Okay, Rob, on the right-hand side, they've got Bernardo Silva. Look, really good player. We've seen him play all down the right. We've seen him as a defensive midfielder, as an 8, as a 10 as well. But as a right midfielder, what would be your front three as a combined Manchester City, Manchester United?
That is an absolute hospital pass. Obviously, Haaland down the centre. On the right, there aren't that many options on the right. United play Anthony on the right wing, and he's been dreadful since he arrived. I can understand the Bernardo Silva thing. Pep Guardiola has used him there, during the Champions League run last year, and he's, you know what you're going to get with Bernardo. He works very hard. He drifts inside. He's very creative. And then a fantastic player that you have to find a position for. On the left, I would probably pick. You know what? I'd have Alvarez on the right just to fit him in, and then I would have probably Foden on the left ahead of Rashford. Rashford hasn't been great this season at all. He had a good season last year, but has been very, very poor. His body language looks poor. I think there are some United fans, if they were to pick their Man United team for the derby on Sunday, would rather have Garnacho on the left than Rashford. Rashford has been that disappointing this season. Which tells the story of United's struggles this year, because he's one of United's key guys, and if he's not playing well, that kind of tells a story about the whole team. United aren't playing well. Rashford's not playing well. It's disappointing, because I think that most United fans thought that after last season he would kick on.
Finally, Dallin, if I was producing that segment, I would have said both teams kind of play in a 4-2-3-1 at times, and they've gone for a 4-3-3. That could then bring in Bruno Fernandes and others. But is it safe to say that you're not in agreement with the three choices?
Yeah, I think the structure of the argument and discussion is a different piece of it. So to not reproduce it, yeah, you're right. It should have been a different formation, different discussion. But I would probably end up where Rob just did. Alvarez has to be in the team. So if you want to put him in the right, fine. Foden's your guy on the left, and obviously Haaland's going through the middle. So that'd be my move.
Okay, full coverage of Manchester City at Manchester United on Sunday. both beforehand, during, and after at ESPN FC. And I'll be back straight afterwards with a live piece to reflect on the game at the full-time whistle. We're going to say goodbye to Rob Dawson, but the magic of television, what we're going to do is we're going to promote the Clasico with a full-screen graphic while Alex Kirkland comes from behind the curtain and reappears after we say that Barcelona against Real Madrid kicks off at 10:15 Eastern, 7:15 out west on Saturday. Coverage begins at 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 out west on ESPN2 and ESPN Plus. The full game is on ESPN Plus. Let's see if this works. Hello, Alex Kirkland.
Hello, here I am.
Look at that. Look at that. I'm going to throw you in straight away with this one and ask you, with Real Madrid top of the table, but Barcelona the only side that haven't lost in La Liga, who's having the better season so far domestically?
Yeah, it's very, very tight, as you say, and that's reflected by the fact there's 1 point between them in the table. Yes, Barcelona unbeaten, but they've had those 3 draws in La Liga, and there were 3 quite disappointing draws the way that they happened. Madrid just lost the 1 game, but it was a big loss. It was that 3-1 derby loss to Atletico Madrid, and that wasn't a good performance at all. So I think there's very little between them. But what's funny, I think, about these Clásicos is that you go into these Clásicos, you think it's quite tight, there's not much between these 2 teams, but then you get these quite extreme results often, big scorelines favouring one team or the other, and they're not always reflective of what else is going on in the season. You know, we saw a couple of years ago, Madrid win the title, but Barcelona go and win big at the Bernabeu. We saw last season, Barca win the title, but Madrid go and smash them 4-0 at Camp Nou in the Copa del Rey semi-final. So like I say, you get these big results in the Clásico that kind of aren't always reflective of what's going on generally. But yeah, I think there's very little on paper to separate these 2 teams.
Okay, let's find out what the respective coaches have had to say at the pre-match press conferences. Xavi and Carlo Ancelotti, both speaking to ESPN FC.
Well, I think we arrived really well. We are ready to compete. We are in a good moment, I think, psychologically, also physically, in a good moment of a good performance in the last 2 games. I think we play so well. But tomorrow is different. It's a Clásico. You have more nervous, more tension, more everything. So we need to control the emotions. I think is the key point tomorrow.
A mí es un partido que me gusta, ser, no digo protagonista principal, porque el entrenador es el protagonista principal solo cuando pierde, pero me gusta. Es un partido que prepararlo es una ilusión, te da mucha motivación. Entonces he descansado bien, volvemos después cargar bien la fase de grupo. Creo que la dinámica es buena, creo que es el mejor momento para jugar un gran partido.
So, the respective thoughts of the managers. Stevie, Nicol, what have you made of the form of both sides this season? Because there have been some games they've found a way somehow, and there have been other games they've been really good. What have you made of them?
Can I first say that, you know, Xavi's interview there was classic coach. Absolutely telling you what he wants you to hear and not answering the question. How can he say they're in a good moment mentally and physically? They got more injuries. I mean, seriously. So,
well, they've got loads of players coming back. That's another reason. The fact that you've got Lewandowski and perhaps De Jong and Rafinha
are they a good
and
place
others.
Physically? Absolutely not. No chance. I mean, it's just coach speak. But I'm with Alec though. As far as the way they're playing, it is tough to separate them. I think the one thing I would say is that, you know, do Real Madrid have more game winners? I think they do. And obviously they've got the biggest one in Jude Bellingham. Mm-hmm. I think you attach that to the problems that they're having. I mean, right now, Xavi probably doesn't know who's starting and who's not. You know, you talk about waiting until the very last minute to figure out whether Lewandowski's going to be fit. Is Rafinha going to be fit? We know João Felix has got a bad hip. You know, is young Ferran Lopez going to have to play in the middle of the park with Gavi? I mean, is Yamal going to have to start? I mean, there are so many questions that Barcelona have that I don't believe, even as we speak, he'll be 100% certain of what he's going to put on the field. And I think if you look at Ancelotti, it's a completely different ballgame. He's trying to figure out who does he leave out, who does he play, how are we going to dismantle this team? And then when he tries to think about dismantling it, he's probably thinking, well, we're not sure if he plays, we can do it a different way, or if he plays. So, yeah, I think as far as the way the season's gone, it's difficult to separate them. Neither have been fantastic. But I think basically for me it boils down to Barcelona has more problems going into this game. I think everything for Real Madrid is pretty settled. It's just about picking the right team. And as I said again, Barcelona, injuries, who's fit, who's not fit. A lot of youngsters might play this game, which I think is a huge deal when it comes to a Clasico. So I'm just going to say that Real Madrid for me are in a far better place than Barcelona, even though Barcelona mentally and physically are in a really good spot.
I say home advantage for Barcelona. It's Montjuic, but they've been good there. They've been really good there this season. So is that reflected in the odds makers and the way they see this game going, Dallin?
It is. It's very tight, but it is. Barcelona is a slight favorite. So you look at the books, plus 145. So you bet $100 to win 145. And Real Madrid's plus 165. But that 170 this morning, it's moved down. So to Stevie's point, what I think is very interesting is if you're going to bet on this game, I wouldn't bet on the game till you see the team sheet, because I don't think we have any clue who's going to be there for Barcelona. And I wonder, once we see that, if more money comes in within that hour heavily on Madrid that moves the number, or if it is Lewandowski starting, if there are some more veteran players that, if João Felix is good to go, however they work that, does that more make people want to bet more on Barcelona as a line move it all that way? I'm very interested to see that movement the hour before kickoff, and once we actually have the team sheets. I do think the biggest thing for me in this is the youth potentially for Barcelona, and Stevie touched on it there. And Javi said it too. There's in certain matches in any sport, in certain games, it's just different. The intensity is different. The experience matters. The mental strain that's on these guys, and to know what to expect to walk into this is huge. And sometimes ignorance is bliss for young players. We've seen that at a high level at different places. But when there's a lot of them on the pitch at one time, and you're wondering how to get through a tough part of the game or tough moments in the game, especially if they went down early or something, to go through adversity, you wonder how they're going to respond. And I really think that Madrid has more guys that have been through it, although Bellingham has not been through a Clasico yet. He's the best player on the pitch and playing like maybe the best player in the world right now. I think 11 goals in 12 games and could go win you this one like he's won them a bunch of other games in both competitions throughout the year they played in. So I think that from the odds perspective, you wait to the team sheet, but I do think the youth is the biggest concern. If I'm betting right now, I would lean Madrid because there's just way less question marks. And once I see the team sheet, I have a feeling I'm going to go pretty heavy Madrid either way.
It's funny, we're talking about the kids on show, and we don't even class Jude Bellingham as one of them. And he's only 20. He's only a year or two older than some of the stars that are coming out of La Masia. Speaking of Jude Bellingham, and Stevie brought his name up earlier as one of the key components to the way that Real Madrid play. Alex Kirkland's written a very good piece on ESPN.com about Jude Bellingham. And before we get the thoughts of our three on young Mr. Bellingham, what about hearing from Ilkay Gundogan and Marc-Andre ter Stegen, two Barca players, on how to stop the young Englishman?
What have you been talking about in regards to how you're going to try to stop someone like Jude Bellingham?
Well, whatever we do in this team is collectively. We know that we also have all of our individual qualities, but we know that at the end of the day we play 11 men on the pitch, and if we are not good collectively, one player can shine for a day or a couple of games or whatever, but we were not going to win a lot. So obviously everything we do, we want to do as good as the whole team, and that is the main thing, I think, to try to compete for all the titles.
I think for us, our general idea won't really change. We have to, of course, be very careful about the possession so that we don't lose it easily, that we don't have stupid mistakes actually in the build-up, and because they can actually create something out of nowhere. And so, we just need to be careful. As always, I think when you play Real Madrid, as I said before, they can create something out of nowhere. And so, this is what we need to take care of.
And I have to ask you just that tough question too. How do you stop Jude Bellingham? How do you stop a player who seems to just be in a special form right now?
No, he definitely is in a special form, and it's interesting to see how he is, as probably midfielder, arriving always to the box, scoring that many goals. And everybody, I heard already people saying like, yeah, let him play for 4 or 5 weeks and it won't be the same. But he's continuing very strong, and it's very interesting to see from a neutral perspective. But definitely we want to avoid that he is getting to these areas where he can really damage our game. And so, we want to control the game as we did in the last games, always against Real Madrid.
Jude Bellingham has made playing for Real Madrid look easy. Not my words, that's the opening sentence to Alex Kirkland's article on ESPN.com. Why has he been able to make it look so easy, Alex?
Well, when you listen to people who've worked with him talk, I think a lot of it is about his personality. And you talk about his maturity. There's that great quote from the Dortmund coach last year when he said, Jude Bellingham is the oldest 19-year-old I've ever met. And you hear Bellingham talk, and you watch him and you see him play, and I just think it's true. I think he's got this incredible kind of maturity and strength of character that I can't dream of having ever, let alone when I was, a teenager or barely into my 20s. I think it's remarkable how level-headed he is, how kind of analytical he is, the way that he thinks about things. I think we've seen that from the way he's sort of managed every step of his career so far, the way that he's dealt with joining Real Madrid. The other thing I was going to say, listening to that clip, I think the great thing about having a player like Bellingham in the form that he's in, all the focus on him, is that yes, the attention's on him, but that means, is there as much attention on Vinicius Jr.? Is there as much attention on Rodrigo, on Valverde, on these other players who can be every bit as dangerous? And if Barca are paying special attention to Bellingham, that frees up Vinicius, a player who was Real Madrid's best player until Bellingham turned up. So that there are so many benefits to having a player like him in the form that he's in. But yeah, there's no doubt the way that he's taken to La Liga has been just remarkable, in just how serene and how straightforward it seems. Let's see how he gets on in the biggest club fixture in world football.
Stevie, like Jude Bellingham, you signed for a massive club at the age of 19 and you made an impact at the age of 20. How's that for a comparison?
Well, mentally, I was still about 14. I'm certainly nothing like Jude Bellingham. Took me a little bit longer than Jude Bellingham to get in my stride, I must admit.
What about his impact?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, though, that neither Gundogan or Ter Stegen actually answered the question, and they probably didn't answer it because there isn't an answer. I don't think they have an answer. Whether De Jong's fit, I'm not sure that's his best position, deep set in front of the back line as far as defending is concerned. Gundogan did a little bit of it with Man City last year, but I don't think, again, his forte is that defensive place. And if it's Ferran Lopez, are we really going to put that on Ferran Lopez, that you have to take care of Bellingham when he makes those runs? So I don't think they have an answer. And I think the other thing is as well that Bellingham has to be thanking his lucky stars that he joined Real Madrid when Ancelotti was the manager, because the change of shape 100% suits his game down to the ground. The fact that he has that freedom to kind of do what he wants, and certainly to get in the box and back up the two front men and Vinny and Rodrigo. So there's a whole host of things going on here, but I think the biggest one is that Ancelotti has very early seen the potential of Bellingham, and that's why he's playing with the two up front, so that Bellingham is now free to join them in the penalty box, and it's paying off massively.
Yeah, and from a Barcelona perspective, it's going to be interesting to see if Lewandowski's fit. Lewandowski's through the middle, but who's going to play wide on the right? They've had Fermin Lopez, they've had Ferran Torres, they've had him playing through the middle. It's going to be interesting. We'll have full build-up to this one. And remember, the game is live on ESPN+, 10:15 a.m. kickoff, 4:15 in Spain. We'll get predictions before we go. Let's start with you, Dallin. Are you with the bookies, who are pretty split? Do you think it'll be tight, or what do you reckon?
I think it will be tight. Like I said, I want to see the team sheet before I put any money down. But I lean Madrid, and assuming that some of the key guys will not go for Barca, and if they do, they're probably not fully fit and 100%. I would say 2-1 Madrid is my lean.
Stevie?
Yeah, I think I'm going with Dal. I'm going to go 2-1 Real Madrid.
Okay, home advantage for Barcelona. It worked for Real Madrid in the first Clasico of last season, albeit they didn't get the job done in the league. Alex, 2 for Real Madrid. What say you?
Well, we did a big preview piece for the site, and I said 3-1 to Madrid. So I've got to stick with that, haven't I? 3-1 Madrid.
Okay, looking forward to it. Remember, full coverage on ESPN Plus if you're in the United States. Kickoff at 10:15 a.m. Eastern. And a reminder, the ESPN FC pre-game show begins 75 minutes earlier on both ESPN2 and ESPN Plus. Enjoy the Clasico, enjoy the Manchester derby, and enjoy all the football, whether you're going or you're watching this weekend. Bye for now.